Welcome back to this explainer. Today we are diving straight into part 3 of a really fantastic 8-part tutorial titled IPv6 Troubleshooting for System Administrators and Technical Support. This comes to us from Virtualization Options LLC, which is a Colorado-based technology research, education, and advisory group. Now, if you're a sysadmin or a tech support pro who already knows IPv4 inside and out, but you've been tasked with supporting your organization's migration to IPv6, well, you're in exactly the right place. In this explainer, we're going to break down the fundamental paradigm shift required to actually troubleshoot IPv6. And honestly, a big part of that is going to be unlearning the IPv4 muscle memory that is currently holding you back. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start by unlearning IPv4 assumptions, then navigate dual-stack realities, look at addressing and gateway mechanics, diagnose common failures, and finally lock down the ICMPv6 golden rules. Section 1. Unlearning IPv4. Reset the baseline. We have to start by validating what you already know about IPv4 and then immediately pointing out exactly why that knowledge is actively harming you in an IPv6 world. You see, IPv6 is not just a larger address space bolted onto IPv4. It is a fundamentally different protocol. The absolute most crucial thing to grasp here is that unlike IPv4's single address assumption, seeing multiple addresses on one IPv6 interface simultaneously is completely normal. In IPv4, if you see multiple IPs on a single interface, your brain immediately goes, uh-oh, something's broken. But in IPv6, you'll routinely see a link local address starting with FE80, alongside global unicast addresses, and even temporary privacy addresses, all living happily together on the exact same interface. This brilliant shift from a single address to a whole stack of addresses really highlights why you shouldn't troubleshoot multiple IPs as an error, unless specific ones are actually missing. Seriously, it's time to stop panicking when you run an ipconfig or ifconfig and just see a giant wall of hex text. Furthermore, you need to clear your mind of a few completely dead concepts. First off, broadcast is dead. Multicast replaces it entirely now, so tools like pinging 255, 255, 255, 255, totally meaningless on an IPv6 network. Also, NAT is largely absent, because every single device is potentially globally routable now. Your firewall design and all your baseline security assumptions just have to change entirely. Section 2. Dual stack realities, simultaneous protocols. Now, what is really fascinating here is a concept called happy eyeballs, which is defined in RFC 835. This perfectly explains why your dual-stack network isn't necessarily breaking outright, but rather silently failing in the background. Browsers inherently prefer IPv6, right? But they will essentially race it against IPv4 after a very specific 250 millisecond delay. So let's look at how that silent failure race actually plays out. Step 1. The browser attempts an IPv6 connection. Step 2, if your IPv6 path is broken somewhere, every single connection incurs this 250 millisecond latency penalty. And then finally, step 3, the connection just falls back to IPv4. The end user doesn't see an outright connection error, they just experience weirdly slow page loads and intermittent sluggishness. And this right here is exactly why you absolutely must test both stacks independently when you're troubleshooting. Section 3. Addressing and gateways, new mechanics. Okay, before an interface even fully comes up, it runs duplicate address detection, or DAD. First, DAD is initiated to check for conflicts by sending a solicitation to a multicast group. If another host actually responds, say a cloned VM that has the exact same EUI64 MAC address, you get a DAD failed flag. And the result of that? Zero global connectivity. If you ever look at an interface and see an address marked tentative or DAD failed, that is your immediate red flag. And since ARP is completely gone, it's been replaced by the Neighbor Discovery Protocol, or NDP. So here's how you actually clear the neighbor cache across different operating systems when things start acting up. On Linux, you'll use IP6 naflush dev eth0. On Windows, it's netshell interface IPv6 delete neighbors. And on Cisco hardware, clear IPv6 neighbors. Honestly, keep these commands handy on a sticky note at your desk because NDP is basically your new best friend for address resolution. Additionally, the way your machine actually finds its way out of the local network has changed. Gateways are now learned dynamically through router advertisements, or RAs. Unlike your old IPv4 DHCP leases, there's no explicit gateway renewal happening here. So if RAs are blocked by a misconfigured switch, or if a router sends an RA with a lifetime of 0, your hosts will just silently drop their default route. Section 4. Diagnosing failures. Common IPv6 issues. All right, let's tackle the PMTU'd black hole, which is one of the most notorious IPv6 headaches. The classic symptom here is absolutely infuriating. Your small pings work perfectly, but SSH sessions, HTTPS traffic, or file copies just stall out and hang right after the TCP handshake. If you're seeing this, you've found a path MTU discovery failure. The primary fix? You need to ensure you are explicitly permitting ICMPv6 Type 2 inbound on your firewalls. Let's trace the life cycle of that specific failure to see why it happens. The source sends a large IPv6 packet outbound. Somewhere down the line, a router's MTU limit is reached because the next link is physically smaller. So, that router politely generates an ICMP v6 packet too big message and tries to send it back to the source. But an overzealous firewall blocks that return message. So the source never actually learns to send smaller packets, and the connection just hangs in a black hole forever. You also really need to watch out for middle boxes, things like load balancers and WAN optimizers. They will often silently drop packets that contain unknown extension headers, which causes mysterious, completely silent failures for otherwise legitimate traffic. And on the security side, beware of legacy VPN clients. If they don't explicitly tunnel IPv6 traffic, an IPv6 connection might just bypass the VPN entirely. This creates a nasty split tunnel leak that exposes the user's real IP and completely bypasses your corporate security policies. Now, if you happen to be supporting an IPv6-only client environment that still needs to reach legacy IPv4 servers, failures often stem from your translation layers. Common culprits here include exhausted NAT64 pools, which cause connection timeouts, or legacy applications that hardcode IPv4 literals, like trying to connect directly to 1.2.3.4. That completely bypasses DNS64 and breaks the connection entirely. Section 5. ICMPv6 Golden Rules. Non-negotiable rules. Listen, you must never ever blindly block ICMPv6 entirely. It is literally fundamental to how IPv6 operates. You must explicitly permit Type 1 for destination unreachable, Type 2 for packet too big, Type 3 for time exceeded, and Types 133 through 137 for router and neighbor solicitation and advertisement everywhere. I cannot stress this enough. If you block these, you will break path MTU discovery and neighbor discovery outright, and you will cripple your network. So with these new tools, rules, and paradigm shifts in hand, it's time to take a really hard look at your own infrastructure. Check those firewall rules. Start monitoring for those silent happy eyeballs fallbacks we talked about, and ask yourself the tough question. Are your firewalls truly ready for IPv6, or are you actually suffering from silent dual-stack failures right now without even knowing it? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and happy troubleshooting.